How to Build a Top Law Firm by Leveraging Technology with Tim Bedford, episode 248. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I have a treat for you today because my guest is Tim Bedford. Tim Bedford is the partner development manager at Ruby and is dedicated specifically to the legal vertical. He works closely with over 40 bar associations, as well as other legal organizations and thought leaders, while also making sure Ruby's offering closely aligns with the needs of attorneys across the country. And Tim and I have crossed paths multiple times, and most recently with our Law Firm Growth Summit, where Ruby was a sponsor of the event. And I wanted to get Tim on the show because he's got a lot to share. He's got exposure to a lot of law firms, and he's got some really good insight on some things that might help you with staying the course, with growing your business, with doing a better job, becoming more profitable. So I'm excited to jump into this conversation with him. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Moshe.
It's my absolute pleasure. And I'm really excited about this conversation we're going to have. And I'm also appreciative of the time that you're making and your willingness to share with our audience. But before we get started, people want to know, who is Tim Bedford? So if you can just give us the broad strokes of your background, how you ended up at Ruby, how you ended up in the legal vertical, and fill in some gaps for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of stole a little bit of my thunder, but I'll give you a little bit more background. So I'm an East Coast guy at heart. Grew up in the Midwest in Chicago and have slowly made my way West Coast. And along that way, I've been a pretty serial startup kind of guy. So I come from my father, he's a small business owner, and it's kind of my passion is just seeing a lot of small businesses grow. And a lot of those law firms out there are essentially small business owners. They obviously went to law school to practice law, but there's definitely that component of running the firm as well. So when I did wind up at Ruby, naturally the whole legal realm kind of spoke to me. So as you mentioned, I work with a lot of the bar associations, thought leaders, other integration partners. So I have my ears to the ground, and I just love doing it. So I've been at Ruby for 3 years as of, I think, yesterday. So quite a little bit of time, always learning, but I definitely have a good pulse as to, what's making these law firms tick. And I'm happy to share today with you and your
That's
audience.
awesome. That's awesome. So you teed me up perfectly. What's making law firms tick? What are you seeing? The industry has changed significantly in the last 18 months, right? What are you seeing as the important things that are moving the needle for your clients right now?
Yeah, well, you pretty much understated it. The legal realm has definitely been shaken up, and that's no secret. So I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. Our offices are now our homes. Our coworkers are our dogs and children and family. So there's a whole new world that we're dealing with. But what I've definitely seen as the number one, I guess, change, so to speak, is that firms that have agreed to take that leap of faith and move towards a truly virtual practice are the ones that are thriving. The ones that are doubling down and investing in technology to run a more efficient practice. Because it's hard. It's hard to, manage everything when everything is so up in the air. So having those things streamlined, really being client-centric and leveraging those technology solutions to offer a more streamlined, offering overall. Those are the folks that are seeing the growth. And we were starting to see that before the pandemic, but obviously there were those setbacks, but the ones that kind of tackled it head on are the ones that are actually experiencing the most growth, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. So what what are the secret things that that they're tackling? Like what are the things that they're doing that are moving the needle for them?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is just investing in solutions like online payment collection and client portals, and streamlining those intake processes. That's just an easy fix to run a more efficient firm. You're obviously more accessible, but it also increases the bottom line. I think if you go back to 2019, firms that were accepting electronic payments actually had 7% more revenue per lawyer than those who didn't. And in 2020, that number actually increased to 16%. So if we're talking numbers, which I know you like to, a lawyer who makes
Yeah.
100K a year would actually make an additional 16,000 just by providing their clients with a safe and secure way to pay them electronically. So I don't know about you, but I think we're all overdue for at least a 2-month vacation. And with an extra 16K in your pocket, that makes things a lot easier. So
Right.
just being more accessible for those folks that are trying to, use your practice and your services, your legal services, that's definitely an easy fix.
Yeah, I love that you went there. It's very, it's mind-boggling that just making it easy for somebody to give you money is a solution, right? Um,
Yeah.
but we need to think beyond. We need to think beyond something like law pay, right? We need to
Mm-hmm.
we need to actually think about how are our customers navigating their current financial situation, right? How do people pay right now? They're using Venmo, they're using Zelle, they're using Bitcoin, right? And I'm not saying that every
Mm-hmm.
law firm should go and accept Bitcoin, but why don't you add a cash app wallet to your practice so you can accept those forms of payments? Why not, like you have an account with Square for that, have an account with Zelle so that you can receive money that way. Make it easy for your clients to say, this is the way that's easiest for me. I'd like to pay you that way. It's like, do you accept cash? No, like it, we,
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I even rewind back in my life, back in college, you're going out to dinner with some buddies and, one person flipped the bill, and tracking down someone to pay you for their portion sometimes took weeks. But now, you go out and everyone just Venmos you, and you have that money instantly. So yeah, I
right.
don't see why that shouldn't bleed into, business. There's no reason to split business and personal. Accepting those forms of payment is, like you said, a logical next step.
Right. The other thing is, without going too far down the rabbit hole of payments, is being able to accept payment plans or making payment plans easy for your clients is another easy win. And we had Richard Formeau from QuickPay on our podcast, and they have a product called LawFunder, LAWFUNDAR.com, and they have this ability for you to integrate payment plans. So a 4-pay plan for any invoice for your client. So basically, when they go to pay it, they're presented with 3 options. Option 1, pay it by credit card. Option 2, pay it through ACH through an electronic check. Option 3, make 4 installment payments by putting in your credit card number. And
Totally.
and by doing that, what you're doing is you're removing that barrier that somebody's like, well, I don't know if I have the funds available. I can't pay. It's a $5,000 bill I owe you. It's way easier for me to say yes to $1,750 than it is to say yes to 5,000, right? So actually my math was off there, right? $1,250, right? So but the concept of making it easy, but also not adding the risk to you, which is the beauty of that specific product. And they're not paying for this spot, but they were a podcast sponsor in the first quarter of this year, and it's a product that there isn't another one out there right now that you can use. But think of Peloton, right? If you go to buy a Peloton bike or a Peloton tread, which nobody's buying treads right now, the the bike, it costs $1,800 to $2,100 plus accessories. When you go to buy it, you're presented with this opportunity to get 0% interest payments where you spread it out over 37 months or whatever. And it's using an outside company called Affirm. Now, I think Affirm is charging Peloton a percentage to offer that as a service to them. But ultimately, to the consumer, it's not costing me anything more to spread these payments out over 3 years. So now it's a no-brainer, because all of a sudden my bike turned into just a gym membership instead of me a big buying decision of a couple of $1,000s. And that's what you need to look at with your law firm is, hey, what do people want right now? And if I can help them conserve cash without it costing them anything more, they can use their credit card the way they normally do. They won't lose the miles. They won't lose the percent cash back or whatever it is they like to use. And they use the credit card, but they get to choose when they're using the credit card, pay me in four installments, and it doesn't cost you anything more. Now, to the attorney, it costs you 5%, but wouldn't you rather get paid up front, pay 5%, and your clients pay their bill, then collect zero and be chasing them for it, right?
Yeah, you actually, I wrote down as you were mentioning it, Klarna and Affirm. We're seeing those pop up a lot more from a consumer basis. And I had a conversation just yesterday with a new organization called Clearco out of Canada, who's kind of doing that from a business perspective. They're offering some of their startups and e-commerce customers that ability to buy technology on a monthly plan. So that's pretty cool that it's now seeping into business. But actually, you brought up a good point. If you zoom out, there's actually a bigger, economical issue at hand. And it has to deal with folks that are needing legal services. I know after reading Clio's legal trends report, there's actually more people now that are in need of legal help, but they're actually delaying or not seeking it because lawyers aren't as approachable. And that is totally our number one reason, is because there are no flexibility, or there's no flexible payment plans. There's a lot of underrepresented folks out there who get scared at that price tag. So being creative in terms of how you offer your services and how they're paid just opens up a totally, unaddressed market. So you could be, catering your services to a lot of business out there that you don't know about. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the truth is that I also went through the Clio Trends report, and that's actually where I realized how important payment plans were from reading that, because they highlight like the top things that a client wants when they're looking for an attorney, when they're making a decision on who they're going to use, and payment plans is up there. It's in the top 3.
Yeah, it's definitely a glaring issue.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that a simple solution like that actually reduces your need to have to discount or write off invoices. When you're pursuing somebody and you're like, oh, we really need you to take care of this invoice. And they're like, well, it's $5,000. I don't have $5,000 today. But if you can reduce it to $4,000, I could try to come up with that. And now you're discounting, you're cutting your fee just to be able to get paid. And attorneys are doing this all over the place. And the reality is that you don't have to, right? There's a better solution. So, but I don't want to spend the entire podcast episode talking about electronic payments and payment plans. But I think it's interesting that that's what you're seeing is moving the needle for businesses, and folks pay attention, because if you're not already set up to do this, go do it. Like, hit pause, go get yourself set up with a payment processor and get yourself ready to be able to accept electronic payments. It's just, in today's day and age, it's so easy. And, it used to be very complicated, but today it's very easy. And there's really no excuse not to have that ability in your firm. But let me ask you this, Tim.
Yeah.
What did you see, going through the pandemic? and watching your clients navigate that, is there what's the silver lining? Something good has come out of this. What have you seen as a positive result of the pandemic when it comes to your law firm clients?
Ooh, that's a tough question, but I think I got the answer for you, and I'm sure pretty much all of your listeners can relate. When you were stay at home, shelter in place, a lot of folks were missing that human to human interaction. Right? You can't go out. You don't want to spread the virus. You don't want to contract it. And that's kind of the essence, and even pre-pandemic, that's the essence of who Ruby is. We have a great angle versus those automated response systems, and the fact that Ruby offers not only a friendly receptionist, but one that we train our folks in leading with empathy and tone matching. So when folks use our service, they really are outsourcing their frontline communications, which is a total leap of faith. We take that pretty seriously. But a lot of folks, we're craving that human to human interaction. And we just saw that folks that signed up with us kind of were able to weather the storm because so many of their clients were then happy to reach someone and talk to someone. So there is a silver lining out there. I think we're starting to see it, as restrictions are starting to be lifted and people are getting vaccinated. But that human to human interaction, you just can't grow that or replace that with technology. I mean, people buy from people like experiencing things with people. So there is that silver lining. And I think we're approaching that hump here shortly, but it's just cool that one of the main value props of Ruby in general, is kind of being highlighted. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic to do so, but I think we're all starting to realize what meant the most to each other as we kind of are starting to weather this storm and making it over the hump of this pandemic.
Yeah. So when it comes to this, navigating the in-person versus the non-in-person, remote, virtual, right? You think that Zoom is going to continue to be the norm after we're able to go back to the office? Because there's a convenience factor, right? To clients, yes, we want, right? When you're trying to get a client, when you're trying to close a deal, you want them to be there in person. It's a much different experience, right? But does the client want to come in person? Do they want to have to drive to you? Do they want to have to find parking and come into your office to meet with you there on your grounds? Or would they rather be home in their kitchen on Zoom having a conversation with you? And I'm curious what you think is going to happen now that Zoom has been introduced as a tool that, and I'm not picking on Zoom specifically, but remote video conferencing it is available as a tool. How is that going to play, or how are you seeing it play into firms as they start to reopen and start to see clients in person again? How should law firms think about navigating that?
Yeah, well, I think it'd be silly to scratch it all together. I mean, it is a powerful tool. It much like accepting, payment online it makes your firm more approachable. You even raised the issue of, if you're looking for a lawyer, say you live outside New York and you don't want to drive in and pay the parking tickets, et cetera, that's a costly day, especially if you don't even wind up hiring that lawyer. So it'd be silly to kind of nix it all together. But I definitely think we will see that kind of trend downward. And it all depends on, what vertical you're operating in. Legal, I think, will always still kind of be at the forefront of human to human interaction. But that said, I don't think Zoom is going anywhere. Not going anywhere. It'll be here to stay for sure. And you'd be silly to kind of nix that and put that by the wayside. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's going to be interesting over these next few months as we are in this transition stage to kind of see what sticks, what was a temporary tool, what people want to get back, and what they kind of want to leave behind.
Right. Now, over the course of navigating through COVID and making all kinds of changes to the firms and how we operate and what we do and how we meet with clients and how we can actually produce results and how do we go to court and all that stuff, it's almost been like a distraction for our law firm owners to be focused on growing the business, to be focused on making things better. What do you think the focus should be now that this is all behind us, or hopefully behind us? I think we're nearing the end. I don't know, but presumably with the bulk of the population getting vaccinated and the numbers keeping on going down, there'll be some sense of normalcy that will return. What do you think a law firm owner should be focusing on as the next thing to improve their results? Like where should they focus their efforts when it comes to their how they're working with their clients or how they're getting new clients or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of answers to that. But if you zoom out, I like to think of a law firm and a firm owner. If you break up their time, which is obviously the most important to them, since they charge by billable hours, and those were fleeting over the course of the pandemic. So I think time, if you want to splice that up, it kind of falls into three main buckets. And that would be administrative tasks, the day-to-day of actually running and pushing paper. Then there's marketing. You obviously need to be found online, acquiring those new customers, putting out your brand, et cetera. And then business development. So there, with balancing all these and wearing all these hats, there's also interruptions that come in your day. Even just answering a phone call. I think there's a study out there that says it takes an average of 23 minutes to get actually fully back into the task at hand that you were tackling before that. So you think about all the telemarketers and actual calls that you receive. It really throws off your day. So if you even feel just a low amount of 5 of those, you're already looking at an hour to 2 hours that have gone by. So being able to smartly delegate, whether that is leveraging a virtual receptionist or hiring internal for maybe a paralegal, along with leveraging technology to better help streamline that, having a Clio instance so that you can manage all of those in a more efficient way, having law pay to accept those payments rather than spend a lot more time gathering those. It's just really being smart about how to run your firm. There's many tweaks and bells and whistles you can add to just make your firm more approachable, more findable, and run a more efficient practice. So I know that was kind of a convoluted answer to it, but there's just so much you can do. And legal vertical, historically speaking, has been, maybe this might not be the right word, but laggards in terms of adopting technology. So really taking that leap of faith and also doing your due diligence when looking in a tool into tools to kind of help your firm. You got to find the ones that are right for you and fit your budget, et cetera. But the ones that are doubling down and kind of taking a step back approach and looking at their firm and where they want to be in the next 2 years and seeing how other successful firms have kind of adapted. Those are the folks that are making the big leaps.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that we have to look at what does the consumer want, right? The person who's shopping for legal services, has that changed, right? If we look at the last year and a half and we say, has my client changed? In other words, are their priorities different today than it was 18 months ago? And yeah. I think the answer is yes. And I think that clients, more than ever before, have expectations of a certain level and quality of service that you're going to provide. And we need to be ready to do that. We need to be prepared to do that. So I'm wondering if you have any input on specifically around, what clients are expecting today to experience, and what are some strategies that law firms can use to provide that kind of experience to them so that they're nailing it, so that they're getting those Google reviews, so that their clients are walking away satisfied.
Yeah, that's a great question. If you haven't already, I highly recommend Jack Newton, CEO from Clio's book, The Client-Centric Law Firm, because that really does help you put things into perspective. And I think I forget who it was, but there's someone famous once said, how they tackle a golf course is they start from the hole and work backwards as to how to get there. So if you kind of think about that from your firm's perspective, you want to start with the client and what they want, and then you get to how you won them over. And that has changed. We've already touched on it a little bit, but Google's algorithm is always changing because there's a lot of factors that go into that. So just thinking of how your law firm is found, it used to be ads on bus stops, and now it's digital ads. There's tons of ways that you can be more approachable. If I'm hiring a new lawyer, it's not just Google that I go to for the best restaurant anymore. I'm hopping on Google to find a lawyer. So that's the next generation of how law firms will be found. So you got to put your shoes into the clients or prospective clients' point of view as to what they want, and then kind of tweak your firm to fit those needs. So really having that client-centric vision is what's going to pay benefits in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up Jack's book. It's a great read, and folks will link that up in the show notes. So if you just look in the description of the episode, or if you go to the website profitwithlaw.com and you're looking at this episode, there'll be a link to that book. You can go and buy it on Amazon or download it on Kindle or whatever whatever your medium is that you like to read or listen to books on. So we'll make that easy for you. Switching gears a little bit, Ruby has an interesting insight into what kind of calls are coming in to the law firm. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed a difference or a change in the types of calls that are coming in, or the mix between, maybe new potential client interest versus existing clients and things like that? I'm wondering if there's anything that you're noticing in the landscape that's changing based on the data that you have internally.
Oh yeah. So we actually do a very good job of keeping data on every disposition of every call we handle. And we are somewhere in the neighborhood, plus or minus a couple thousand, of answering 50,000 calls per day. So we have 13,000 plus customers, not all legal, but I think 45% of our business is legal. So we even break some of our statistics down just for legal in general. But there's a couple of things that we've noticed. And one of them is what we would call high risk callers. That is happening a lot more. So people are frustrated, and people want the answers to their questions right away. I think there's another stat in Clio's trend report that says something along the lines of, if you don't answer someone's question or inquiry within 24 hours, you failed to meet the needs of 85% of callers. That's
I
just
thought you were
crazy.
going to say, if you don't, I thought you were going to say, if you don't answer someone else will.
Well, that's true too. And that
right.
kind of goes back to my point of, how people find law firms to work with. They hop on Google, they give the highest rated one a call. If they don't answer, they are moving on to the next one. That's just how it works. And that's not even legal specific. You need a roof repair. Same thing happens there. If you call the highest rated one, they don't answer, you just lost their business. So it kind of leads into a talking point that I wanted to raise. And there's some good quick fixes for law firms to kind of think about. And they're not too groundbreaking, but there's definitely things that kind of seep past the self-conscious firm owner. And there's a couple factors when even just handling a call. And I'll spit them out to you, but timeliness, as I just mentioned, is probably the most critical factor. I mean, if you are not answering that phone, or let's even rewind it to your website, if you aren't answering those inquiries or having, maybe a chat solution on your website,
Mm-hmm.
which would be silly because, you pay money in advertising to drive people to your website, or as we call it, your front door. It's no different than your phone. You're losing people if you're not able to answer their inquiries while they're, trying to look at the services you provide. So just having someone accessible and able to answer those in a timely fashion is massive. And then on top of that, responsiveness, the having an answer for every question that they ask, and being approachable, that is
Mm-hmm.
huge. But then also, this one's the easiest fix, but it's understandable why it doesn't happen, and that's just overall friendliness and likability. Just being able to lead with kindness. And I know, everyone's going through ups and downs, and it's easy to kind of be in your own world, so to speak, but it's also just as easy to kind of flip that switch and at least put yourself in the caller's shoes for a second. So being more approachable, friendliness is a massive factor. And as I said, we train our receptionists. They go through, I think, a 4-week onboarding process before they're actually handling calls. And we are teaching things like empathy and lead and tone matching. No one is really calling a lawyer in a good mood unless you're, working on a business deal or something. They're either, broken a bone and being sued, they're in a car accident, preparing their will, or who knows. So just being able to meet those, high risk callers in their scenario and their world, and bringing that human level back to reality is massive. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into it. And like I said, that client-centric model is really paying dividends for the folks that are embracing it.
Right. Now, is it a pretty much given these days that you have to have some sort of answering service for your firm, or is that still something that law firms have not, in it by and large adopted as a given? I mean, we kind of like, when that you need a phone system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're one person, you need a phone number for your law firm. You don't want to give your cell phone number as your law firm number, right? So
Yeah.
there's certain, like, or you need practice management software. Like most,
Right.
The only law firms operating without practice management software are the ones being run by 70-year-olds that have been around for 40
Exactly.
years and are still managing on paper, right? But if
Yeah.
you're brand new, you're starting a new law firm, or if you started in the last 10 years, you have practice management software. So
Right.
is virtual reception services something that is, it's a given when you start a law firm, you need that? Or is that still something that you need to convince people of?
If I would say it's more of a given, but there's definitely some education behind it. One of the things that we used to say is all you need to start a law firm is Ruby and a cell phone. And I would edit that to now be and practice management because that just really helps you, it's the engine to your firm. But
Right.
The nice thing about Ruby is, we have a pretty highly functional mobile app, and that does address one of the talking points you just said. You don't want to be giving out your cell phone number. You want to be able to separate personal life from work life. And that's the nice thing about Ruby is you can actually port your number over to us, much like, we can essentially be a service provider like a T-Mobile or a Comcast. So you not only can you get rid of your cell phone bill, but you can we provide you with a business line. So that way you are carrying around your cell phone. And if you ever want to make a call out from your firm, you can just hop on the Ruby app and then make a call from there. And it's like you're calling from your business. So you're essentially carrying two phones in one. And that really is nice, along with some other neat functionality like setting your status. That way, when you're in the courtroom, we obviously know not to page you because you can't take calls. And we can actually go one step further. And when someone's calling, asking where you are, we can say, oh, Moshe's actually in the court. He'll be out in an hour and a half. Can I take a message? So really, again, just adding that extra layer, making it sound like we are an extension of your team rather than just an outsourced service. We actually have some customers who hire Ruby, and their friends then call them at work and they're like, did you sell the business? You sound like you just grew to a 500-person company. So just even installing Ruby as a solution makes you sound like a more efficient practice too. So there's a lot of intangibles that that just make it a lot easier to run a firm. But rewinding, yes, I think it is pretty standard that you should at least explore it and see if it's right for you. But there's also some people, like you said, those older folks who are old fashioned and still running pen and paper, and maybe just don't want to kind of take that leap of faith. They have those secretaries who have been in there forever, and they're like family to them. So you can't blame them. But yeah, it's definitely at the forefront of anyone who's at least starting a new firm to at least explore it. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tim, this has been a great conversation so far. Let me ask you this. Is there anything that you think we should be talking about specifically within your area of expertise that we haven't covered that lawyers need to know, or law firm owners need to know, or we need to address in this conversation?
That's a great question. I do have a couple things in mind, and I know we've already touched on a lot of them, but I do think it'd be best to just kind of state it blankly. If there's 3 key takeaways, I would say 1, invest in technology. We've seen it even before this pandemic. When there's economic lulls, it's those folks that actually double down and spend in marketing that actually see growth, rather than just being a flag in the wind and seeing where it takes them. So not just marketing though. It's, like I said, those payment plans, the practice management tools. It's everything. Just be more approachable. The second would be free up your time so that you can focus on billable work. That's how you get paid. There's plenty of different solutions to help save you time. You can certainly outsource and be smart about it. You went to law school to practice law, not to answer your phones, not to push paper. So be smart about that. Do the work to defend your clients. And then the third is just meet those basic client expectations by returning their calls, answering their questions, and offering them empathy and human kindness along the way. I know it sounds silly and horseshoes and rainbows, but it really does pay dividends in the long run. And like I said, we're all craving that human interaction. So people remember that, how you make them feel, not just what you did for them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And if people want to take a next step with you, they want to follow up, they're interested in Ruby's services and what they have to offer, where should they go?
Yeah, feel free to give us a ring or visit our website. I'm sure if you mention that this podcast with Dream Builder Financial, we've got a sweet deal for you of $200 off. So happy to have that conversation with you. We've got a full team of really consultative sales folks who want to make sure that it's a right fit for your firm, because we understand, outsourcing your frontline communications is no joke. We take it pretty seriously, as I mentioned, and we are an extension of your team. We're not just an outsourced service. So definitely capitalize on that. Reach out to us. We're happy to have that conversation. You can observe $200 off your first full month, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I've had a killer time talking with you, Moshe, as always. We love hanging out.
Awesome, Tim. Thank you so much, and really for sharing, and without holding back. I mean, you really just you brought all of the knowledge that you've acquired over the last 3 years at Ruby, and just kind of put it all together succinctly in this episode. And I'm sure that there's a bunch of takeaways. Folks, if you were out riding a bike or taking a shower or running or whatever you do when you listen to the podcast, this is one of those that you're going to want to go back and maybe jot some notes down. But the good news is we jot notes down for you as well, and you can get the show notes for this episode both in the description of this podcast and your podcast player, as well as on our website at profitwithlaw.com. And if this is the first time you're tuning into an episode with us, you want to make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get notified every time we release a new episode. We do that twice a week, every Tuesday and every Thursday. Last piece is share the wealth. If you enjoyed this episode, go to a friend, go to a colleague, go to somebody who can benefit from it, and just literally click that share button in your podcast player, send them the link, text it over to them, let them listen to this episode, let them enjoy what you just enjoyed. And by doing that, you'll help us having spent the time behind the microphone to create this content, you'll help us disseminate it to more people, and we'd really appreciate that. So Tim, thank you very much again. Folks, we'll catch you on Tuesday. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Bye now. Thank you for tuning into the Profit with Law podcast. Your feedback is extremely valuable to us, as well as helping us reach more people with this valuable content. Please leave us a rating and review in your favorite podcast directory. Join us again next time when we are back with even more strategies to profit with law.